everyone, this is Dr. Liz, and you're listening to Include with Dr. Liz. This show is about everyone, all people, including you. It's about people and their diverse lived experience in this world. I chat with guests to get to know them, their identities, and their inclusion needs, so we all have an opportunity to understand how best to include them, so together we can create a world where everyone thrives. George is a Welsh mountain hiking, mushroom hating, digital designer and people champion with a mental illness who identifies as transgender male and part of the LGBTQI+ community. Described as authentic, friendly and approachable, George is a twin, and his ultimate career aspiration is to create inclusion for all trans people in this world. Okay, welcome, George.
Thank you. That was I completely forgot about the mushroom thing. I was like, oh yeah, I do hate mushrooms.
Now, about 9 months ago, you pushed through your fear and you shared a post on LinkedIn about your identity. What happened next?
I don't know. I felt like I was hiding a part of myself in a way. And I was sick of seeing all the negative connotations you see about trans people online, and especially in the workplace, and LinkedIn being the most professional, social media platform. I thought, I'm going to just see what happens here. I'm going to post a bit of my story online and just see the reaction. Because it felt like, at least then I don't have to like out myself everywhere I go, because I've done it already. It's out there online. If you want to look at it, it's there. And it just went, crazy. It just kept going and going. And so then it made me realize, wow, like I need to do this. I need to start talking about this more, because people want to learn. And, I wish I had this when I was, 10 years ago, before I transitioned. I wish I had someone there sharing their story.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so it went viral. Was it viral in a good way, where people's responses positive on the most part?
Oh, do you know what? I'm so shocked, if anything. Good shocked. It was, I'd say, 98, 99% positive. The amount of people that reached out to me with supportive messages, lovely messages, them essentially telling me that they're trans and they don't know how to go about it, or, parents reaching out, all sorts of lovely stories I was hearing. And, that's always going to be that 1% negativity. But, luckily I'm in a place mentally in my life now. I've lived this way for 10 years. I feel like I've overcome many obstacles now. So hence why, I was ready to post it. But, for me, seeing the negative comments, if anything, it fueled me even more to be like, well, this is exactly why I'm posting it, because, my employers can see, oh yes, this is important to talk about in the workplace. And also, you're posting on LinkedIn, your boss will see your comments. So good luck with your job, So
yeah, that's a really good perspective, George. I think you bring up two really good points. Firstly, you sharing created representation and visibility that allowed other people that perhaps weren't there yet and just needed for lack of a better term, a role model to feel safe. If they can see 99% of commentary being positive and affirmative, then that gives them more confidence, right?
Yes, yeah.
But I love on the flip side, and I think there's a couple of angles that you can look at it, is that you're saying that, oh, good luck to you. If you've just written something really negative, then everyone else is going to see that about you. And they are in the minority. But I also think what it does highlight is, when we're in an organization, those of us that aren't specific identities that are confronted with hate, may assume that it doesn't really exist because we don't think it, so therefore it may not exist. So when you do see examples of that demonstrated, perhaps it does reinforce in those that do have that privilege, I still do need to advocate for these identities, because this is hate that still exists.
Say if you as a company now are employing somebody new, and we're all working virtual remote, so a lot of us do have introductions to a new member via Teams, whatever, Zoom, whatever. And it could be that 15 of us are in the call, this one new person joins, and that's an intimidating thing for anybody. When you're trans and you are yet to start hormone therapy, if you want to go that way, if you get to start that, and that's your like, that's going to make you feel really comfortable. Like it has with me. People now read me the way I wanted to be read.
Mm.
So if I was to join a company pre-starting hormones and they see my name, George, they don't see any pronouns and they're thinking, what is this person? Like, what I don't, are you a girl, boy? What are you? For me, I would just love if managers and bosses just said, hi, my name's George. My pronouns are he, him. Can everyone just go around the call and just introduce yourselves with your pronouns? Because it's such a quick little thing. It's like I wouldn't say to you now, Liz, I wouldn't go, you wouldn't say to me, oh, my name's Liz. I wouldn't then turn around to you and say, no, you're Emily.
No.
No, my name's Liz. No, it's Emily. You look like an Emily. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Great
it's
illustration, George. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Creating a safe space for people, we need to remember that it's an ongoing thing. We can't assume we've done it and now we can move on. So I will be completely transparent. Maybe 5 years ago or so, when pronouns just started to be something that you would put on your LinkedIn profile or in your signature, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And this was well before I was really dedicated to working in the inclusion space. And I thought, well, I don't expect you to share your pronouns with me. So I hadn't got there yet on why that it was important for me to share mine. So I just kept thinking, yeah, but I don't need you to share them. It was kind of like people that say, oh, I don't see your color.
Yeah.
Because I called myself on it, right? Like until I realized, no, I need to do it. I know it's obvious how I gender represent, but it's not as obvious for everyone. So I need to do it so everyone feels safe to do the same. And I'm there now, right? Like, I mean, it took me long, but I'm just saying, I paused and thought, well, do I have to?
Yeah,
No.
that's exactly how I felt. I thought, well, people read me that way, so why do I have to now? And it's like, well, no, I need to because I call them baby trans when they've yet to start hormones or anything. Like, baby me would be so appreciative of, so like that's how I think of it. But
yeah, exactly. We're doing it for others, not for ourselves.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we've already started talking in depth about tips on how to be inclusive of people like you, but I think just like every other podcast, we should stick to script. So just like every other guest, you completed a questionnaire and there was a really long list of identities and you ticked 4. What were they for you?
My identity is male. Obviously, not only that, I am transgender, which I typically use the word trans. I don't know why transgender for me, sometimes I have this like ick with that word. I don't know if it's because I don't know. I use it, but I prefer trans, or trans guy, whatever, trans man, whatever. And then obviously I'm in the LGBTQI plus community, so that's another one. And then I also, since I've been 13, I was diagnosed with depression, so I've always been a massive advocate for mental health as well. And it kind of just, my whole journey really has sort of, it's always tied in with my mental health because there's been ups and downs and all sorts. So that's a big one for me as well.
Yeah. And I think just the way you've described it, everything is intertwined. So your gender identity and expression is not separate from your mental health. They're together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so obviously that speaks to our intersectionalities. I want to go back a bit just so that people understand what it feels like to not see yourself in the mirror the way you feel on the outside.
I think it makes it more complicated for my situation because I also have a twin sister and we'd always just grown up very, playing on the farm and, in the mud and just being kids, I guess, So it never really occurred to me that there was a difference between what girls do and what boys do to the world. It wasn't really until high school that it began to hit me when, girls are wearing makeup and they're dating boys and they're talking about all this different stuff. And again, me and my sister were just so like really just confused with why we're not there yet. And I remember we both said to each other in like, we're like 12, the first year of high school, we're thinking, right, by the end of high school, we'll be there. We'll have a boyfriend, we'll wear makeup, didn't happen, did it? But we were just so delayed, I feel, and it didn't help, and that's when my mental health really, really sort of catapulted, really, from 13 onwards. And I just didn't know what it was. I really didn't know what it was. And then when I was in college, then I had my first girlfriend, and I just remembered my first real thought of, I guess, gender was when we were both holding hands and we were walking through Bristol, and this couple in front of us who, you know, I mean, back then I assumed, but they were a cisgendered couple and girl and boy holding hands in front of us. And I had this sense of jealousy, just an anger and sadness all at once when I saw this couple. They're not doing anything different. They're holding hands just like we are. The thing is, I never ever identified with being a gay woman ever. Um, it wasn't that I rejected it or was against it. It just didn't associate with me. You know, it's like me saying to you now, you're a straight man. You're like, well, no, I'm not. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just odd. So that for me never was a thing. And then that's when I really started to look into I mean, this was the age where coming out videos were huge on YouTube, 2012, 2013. So I started watching loads of them and I thought maybe I'll connect with a gay woman. I'll watch a video or two and I'll see. And I watched loads of them and it made me ill because I was watching so many and I didn't connect with any of them. And I thought, what's wrong with me? Am I broken? I saw a little thumbnail and it was a man. And I thought, well, maybe I'll connect with a gay man. Who knows? I'm just at this point, I'm desperate to connect with one person. It wasn't a gay man, it was a trans man. And he was telling his story about how he was born female and now he's a man and he has a beard. And I was thinking, what is this? What is that? No, this is not me, because everything he said was like tick, tick, tick. And it really stressed me out because, I'm from a rural village. No one's here that's diverse. There's one doctor. He knows nothing, so it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And that's where it all started, really. That's where it kind of went.
Penny dropped.
Yes, the penny dropped.
But penny dropped and panic set in because you're like,
yes,
now I know the truth. Now I probably have to do something about it.
Yeah, like what do I do? Yeah, small Welsh village, nothing around. I went to the doctor, and they literally just said to me, "I don't know what to do." And so they threw me to a counselor, they threw me to a therapist, psychologist, you name it. All of them. Don't know what to do. I don't know. So I'm thinking, what am I supposed? I'm 19 and I have just left education. I now have to just throw myself into a career, clearly, or go to university or do something with my life. But I can't do any of that because I don't feel comfortable in my own skin to leave the house. I want to just die all the time. Being serious here, like I just couldn't see past day 2. So for me to leave a doctor's and then not give me a diagnosis or not help me, because that's what you go there for, right? You go there to be given a solution to your problem. And they couldn't do that for me. And I remembered going to the psychologist, and her first question, I sat down with her and she said, "Are you wearing women's jeans?" And I thought, what relevance does that have to do with anything? And basically, she wanted me to understand, she wanted to clarify if I understood the difference between a transgender person and a transvestite person. Clearly, I knew this because I was there with her, giving her everything that I, discovered about myself. She really didn't help whatsoever. She told me, come back in 2 years and tell me how you feel then.
It's so damaging.
Right. So I had to leave the room. She told me that I was angry, so she sent me out. It takes a lot for me to get angry. I'm a very calm person. But obviously I was very passionate about it. This is my life. It is my life, basically, just in her hands right now. She's saying, come back in 2 years.
I want to pause there for a moment. I want to build some people's empathy into that, because some people may be listening and think, I can't really see how impactful that is.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to the doctors? And this is my story, but I'm giving people this example for them. Have you ever been to the doctors because you haven't slept for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks and you are broken? All you need to do is sleep. You just need something to help you sleep. I've been in there. I've gone to the doctor. I present strong. Right? I always go, I'm assertive. This is what's wrong with me. I just need you to do this. And they said, no, you just need to see a counsellor. No, I just need to sleep.
Yes.
Because I will be able to handle life if I just get 3 nights of sleep, please. And you become so exasperated. And I literally got sent out with nothing, no treatment. Come back once you've seen a counsellor. And that wasn't going to help anything, because even seeing a counsellor, I did not have the energy to deal with anything emotional anyway. And I'm sure there's got to be people out there that can appreciate and empathize through that experience. It's the same thing. You're being dismissed.
That's a good example. No, it really was like that. It's, I could tell the doctors, and I did. I told them, this is what you need to do. You refer me here, and I will then see this person. And they just were like, but how? And that's the thing, we're talking 10 years ago where, gender therapy didn't exist basically in the UK for one. And if it did, it was in London. And I live 4 hours away from London. So basically what ended up happening was, I did have to just put up with it for like a good couple of years. And, I just thought it got to the point where I genuinely just thought I can't do this anymore. And, all jokes aside, I just didn't see the point anymore in my life. So my parents finally saw this, and, my mum, bless her, she even sat my dad down. She said, look, if this continues, like if you can't get your head around supporting George the way I do, we can't be together, because I'm with my child and my support is with my child now. Marriage, they'd always been such a strong couple. They still are now, but she was really like just at the point where she's like, look, if you don't help as well, if you're not in, I'm out the door with George. We're gone.
So how did she know that he wasn't on board? Did you know he wasn't on board? And
yes, because my dad is, again, he's the biggest supporter now. He goes around telling people I'm doing talks. He's so proud of me. He's, great. But 10 years ago, he didn't understand any of it. And he was scared. He didn't want people to know. I'd go for drinks with my friends in town and he'd be scared of my safety. He said, don't go around talking to different people, and he's a very traditional Welsh man, rugby, lads, football. So for him, it took a lot longer to get his head round, basically. Whereas my mum was a bit more quicker,
What could have helped him get on board faster, do you think?
Seeing me struggle. He could, I was in university at this point and it was affecting my work. I just couldn't cope with the work because I was just so depressed.
But hang on, I don't want your mental health or people like you and their mental health to have to be the catalyst for people to get on board to support you. Do you have any tips or ideas on what we could do to expedite people getting on board without having to see the pain?
Yeah. I mean, it would just go back to, again, had that psychologist just said, right, forget what I said, not 2 years, let's talk now. Let's talk next week and I'll see what I can do. I'll see who I can refer you to. No, what had to happen was I had to then just suffer in silence for the best part of 2 years, hope to God that I would get a reference back to this psychologist who then may then say to me, oh, I'll put you on a referral. That'll take another 2 or 3 years. And that's the thing with the NHS. It can be years to be seen. I haven't been seen still. What happened with me is after my parents seeing the stress and just, it was horrible. It was a dark time. Luckily and thankfully, my parents were in the financial situation that they could help me go private. And it was just enough was enough. We booked the train down to London. We booked the consultation with the doctor. And, the rest was history from there. It all started flowing from there on out. And, got on hormones. And it was the best thing ever. I thought, oh my God, my life is finally starting. Like, wow. And, it was my last year of university. And I remember I came back it was the summertime, I came back to university. And my best friend in uni at the time, who I hadn't seen in months, because obviously we all lived all across the country, and my body had changed at this point. So he'd seen me after like a few months, and he said to me, "Oh my God, you look like you've been hit with a frying pan." And I thought, what? And then he explained, because my shoulders had gotten broader, my shape, my body had changed into like a more masculine appearance. And I just thought it was really funny. And, I was 22 when I started going through my second puberty. And I thought it was hilarious that my voice was breaking, and I would scream and like laugh at my voice cracking. I had girls interested in me, but they wouldn't want to go any further in terms of a relationship because even though they accepted me and they said, yes, George is, they described me as, yeah, George, he's a guy, like whatever. But the second, I remember this one girl, she rejected me basically. And I remember I hadn't seen her for months. Months went by. I started hormones. Months later, she saw me and I was getting out of my car and I heard her say, is that George? I turned to her and like I smiled and the look on her face, I'll never forget. It's like you could see the sense of regret. It's as if it's like, it's
You
as if,
glowed up, George. Is that what happened?
yeah, I was literally there like, oh, well, you know, but it was literally just like, it felt like I was finally seen.
So that was like a real affirmation for you, was it?
Yes, it was like, because I'd always been like, just you watch, I'll have a beard one day, I'll have a deep voice one day. And it was always like like, it's as if they were listening to a child lying and they were like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And it's like that happened because I remember she said something like, oh, I only date guys. And I'd say, but I am a guy. And she's like, well, not really. So it was that kind of, what? And then she saw me and it was like, it was like she thought, oh, what? He is. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, in your face.
Mic drop.
Yeah. So she's like, yeah, and what?
Okay, so I want to ask you then, if I am one of your old friends, let's say from before you had any hormone therapy or any transition work done, when I see you, should I say something? Like, is it something that is a good thing to do? Not, you look like you've been hit by a frying pan. Can I say, oh my God, George, you look so hot? Or like,
when I see people that I haven't seen for years, I really do love it when they say like, oh, you look really well. Or I think the one thing that, it's all down to personal preference, isn't it? But the one thing that's actually reminded me of this is, it's like a backwards compliment when you tell a trans person, oh, you pass so well, or you'd never know.
Now that's a microaggression.
Yes, and it's like, don't say that. And I used to think that was such a compliment back in the day, you know? But now it's like, no. One, you're not meant to know, and two, that's really weird to say. That's like me saying to you, you look like a girl so well. That's kind of the point. Like, okay.
Because, it's not actually what they're saying about you in that moment. It's what they're saying about others that don't pass as well.
Exactly. And that's a massive thing, because passing the word, it is such a horrible word because and I describe passing now as, in my head, if I can see myself the way I want to in the mirror, I'm passing. So if, a trans woman, trans man, if they look at themselves in the mirror, but to the rest of the world, they don't pass. If they can see themselves in that mirror, they pass.
It should be by your own individual measure, not by someone else's binary measure.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to ask some questions. Well, let's see how this goes, because these aren't questions I have, but these are questions I think other people may have. When you are female presenting or thereabouts, before you've done any transitioning, to the LGBTQI community, you are presenting as gay. So you can form a relationship with a gay woman.
Yeah.
What happens then when you are now male presenting? Are you gay or straight?
That's the massive thing people get really confused with. And my dad was the same. So when I obviously told them I feel like I really want to be a guy. I just feel like I'm a guy. And he said, well, why can't you just be a girl and date girls? I thought that's my sexuality is nothing to do with my gender. It is nothing. To me, how I explain it is gender is between your ears. Anything in your brain, that's how you think. If you look at yourself in the mirror, what you see, that's your gender, your expression, how you feel. Your sexuality is how you feel in your heart, or how you feel down there, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? They're completely different things. And that's the thing. It's like, you looking at me now, if I was to tell you I'm gay, would you think he likes girls? But you go, well, no, because if he's gay, he likes men the same as him. It's that simple, it's just ask somebody what they identify as.
Yeah.
If they say I'm a girl and they like girls, that means they're gay. It's it's like that.
Now,
Yeah.
I think as well, we might use this opportunity to help people understand the difference between gender and sexuality, but also gender identity and gender expression, because I think you gave some good examples there.
Yeah. So I don't know why I always reference Harry Styles, because I like what he stands for in terms of expression. So he's a classic example of, he is male presenting. His gender is male, from as we all have heard. Maybe he's different. I don't know. But his expression is, he will go on stage wearing all sorts of flamboyant dresses and florals and pearls, and and I think that's the thing, is people fail to understand that clothing, it's a piece of fabric. Who was it? Which cave person decided that piece of cloth is male? It's like, I just don't get it. But it's a really weird one. I think everyone's got their own sort of take on it, really. But
So I have an idea, and
yeah.
it's a conceptual one. I want to float it past you.
Okay.
Because of the T in LGBTQI+.
Yeah.
The T isn't a sexuality. I kind of think it should be removed, and it's part of gender. It isn't.
Right. I think this is, I get that. I had this debate myself internally for years. I thought, why am I in that? People think that if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, that you're automatically accepting of trans people, and that isn't the case. I've met many gay people that are transphobic and have just right straight up just said things to my face, and I thought, what? So yeah, there is a bit of a weird, I do get it, but it's like I 50% think it should be on its own, but then I 50% get why it should be part of the community. It's a very weird one, and I'm glad actually now that we do have, I love going to Pride events, love going to all that, but I do also love that there are now trans, Pride events just purely for trans people. And I think that's important as well, to have those, completely focusing on each sort of community, really,
because it's a very different lived experience.
Yes, and I think that's why people get so confused. Yeah.
We really have to acknowledge it's a different lived experience.
Yes.
And it's also certainly a different lived experience for trans males and trans females as well. So that's why we really have to appreciate this intersectionality of people. Just thinking all trans people have the same experience? No. Because
oh my gosh, no. Yeah.
Because even if you have said that there are trans people that choose to transition, there are those that don't. There are those that choose to still present whatever gender that they were assigned at birth, but still identify and want pronouns associated with the gender they feel, and that all has an impact on how they are received and treated. So let's move on to treatment and your lived experience. I want to ask how, firstly, because you did mention you came from quite an isolated Welsh country town, how did your parents sort of take this as you and your sister sort of evolved in something that was left of center?
I've always been so close to my family, and that's one thing that I will never, take for granted, is my family. We are so close and open, and we've always been very open with communication from day one. So the second I felt something was a bit off for me, I just went straight to my mum and I told her. Naturally, yes, they were all very upset, because it is hard. It's taken me till the past few years to realize that they essentially lost somebody. And they felt like they were mourning, because I was so in my head. I used to think, why are you misgendering me? Stop calling me she. Stop using my old name. My name is George and I am a boy. Like, you say he, you say him. Do not say she, because it's really upsetting to me. And which is understandable, but I failed to understand that for the best part of 19, 20 years, my parents had a little girl who was called another name, who used she and her pronouns, and that's what they'd always been used to. So my mum described to me, and she said, look, she died to me. I've lost my daughter, but I've gained a son. So for me, that it was a long process for me mentally to understand that, and now I get it. I do get it, and I sympathize with parents who are mourning the loss of part of their child. My mum's she says all the time now that, she sees me again, like she can see the old happy me because it's come back.
Tell me about the workplace, because you did say you've had, on the most part, a really good experience. Have there been
Yes.
any examples of where it wasn't a good experience, and what did that look like?
The second I left university, and I'd had my top surgery, and a month later I got my first job in a supermarket. The only problem I had there was that it was out. I was outed. I told management in confidentiality because I had to give my old passport for ID for the job. I hadn't updated my passport. It still said female. It was in the process, but again, I didn't think about doing it because I'd what effort, So I I gave them a letter and explained why my passport looks a bit different. But then it got out, and I was angry at the time, but it's kind of like I was telling people in work. It wasn't like I was hiding from it. But that was kind of like the first sort of experience. The second experience where it did get a bit weird, I got my first design job. So I studied graphic design at university. So this is my first, career move.
Mm.
And it was a very small marketing agency, and it was predominantly just men, about 10 men. And I went in and I used the word stealth because this is how people describe, if you're trans and you're describing yourself as, oh, I live a stealth life. The word stealth is like you're hidden, you're going, that's how I was living. So I thought, I'm going to go into this workplace. Nobody needs, I mean, they don't anyway. No one needs to know I'm trans. I'm just a regular guy like they all are here. And that's how I went in. And I just remembered there was a few conversations where trans people were brought up, and I can't remember word for word, but it was something like, oh, would you sleep with a, insert gross trans word, horrible word here. And then the guys, oh yeah, I would. Well, if the trans, well, what do you call it? Like if they're now a guy, but they were a girl, well, I'd sleep with one of them because they're like still a girl, basically. And I was just sat there like, 5 minutes before that, they were complimenting my beard. So it's like, it's like, what? Do you not understand? I'm sat right here. They are literally treating me the way I want to be treated. So we'd all talk about our girlfriends, all this normal lad stuff. And it's the fact that, and this goes back to the point I always make, is you can't assume. You just can't. I was sat there. They had no clue. And they were making jokes about my community.
You describe a really interesting dynamic because, as you said, you felt safe because they saw you as one of them. But by going stealth, because you identify as male, and so that is just as it should be.
Yeah.
But what happens is when you are in stealth, you're not representing your community, therefore creating a learning opportunity for others to manage their behaviors. And it's not on you. It's not your job to make yourself uncomfortable environments to teach them. But it's a really interesting thing that by them not knowing, they felt safe to be assholes.
If I meet someone new, I never introduce myself as, oh, I'm trans. It's never to me, that's just like an added element to me. So for example, I've been with my partner now for 6 years almost, and she's got a daughter, so she's my stepdaughter. She was 4 when I took her on. She's 10, she's 11 this year. It's only actually last week I told her that I was trans. And that's purely because, one, for me, I wanted her to know me for me. I wanted her to grow up with George, my stepdad, just a normal guy, whatever. What I'm getting at is I always make sure that people know me for me first. It's not just I'm the trans guy. I don't have to share that, but I choose to now because I want to educate people. And I do get it. It's such a scary thing to be a voice for the trans community because of all the hate and God, the legalities behind it. In several states in America, I could be sacked for being trans, or in several countries in the world, I could be killed. But I'm fortunate enough to be in a safe environment. I've got a house, a loving partner, family around me. I've got a stable job. I'm in a country that hopefully stays safe for me. I'm just using that sort of benefit of mine to hopefully change the path for future generations.
Now, I want to take a learning away for myself and for others. in the very small example that you gave when it was your first job out of college before you started the career jobs, but when you're working in the supermarket and it was disclosed on your behalf around your gender identity. And even if it was done in the best intent, like if there was no malice behind it or whatever, I think what that represents is taking your power away from you. And I think we need to, those that are allies and advocates, recognize that it's not our place to disclose. It is our place there to support and advocate for the other person without disclosing. Just call them George.
I knew people were finding out, and it wasn't from me. And that was the issue for me. It was the fact everyone was finding out from so and so, and I'd ask them, "Who's told you?" And they'd all say, "I don't know." Like, well, no, you do know. Just tell me. It's my story to tell. I was doing my job, and same thing. I was doing every shift. Went up to this woman to get returns to bring back to the department, and the woman just, there's customers around us, okay, and the woman just said to me, she looked me dead in the eye and went, "I'm so proud of you." And I thought in that moment, I'm just collecting the returns. What do you mean, Deborah? Like, her name's not Deborah, by the way. So I was like, I don't, what is this woman on about? And then the penny dropped. Then I thought, oh no, she means well. Like she meant well, and I get it. So it's hard to be angry at someone who means well, but at the same time, if you want to be
kind of condescending.
If you want to be an ally, there's different ways about it, you know. It's such a fine, it really is a fine line. It really is. When I posted my story on LinkedIn, I had loads of responses, but you know, there was a few that particularly stuck with me. And there was one person, a cisgendered man that was in the military, middle-aged man, picture on LinkedIn, just this bold man, you know, with the suit, tie, whatever. And he reached out to me and he said I was so brave in sharing my story, but you know, he gave me a backstory. He fought in the war, you know, all this stuff. He'd seen loads of his friends die, you know, he'd seen all sorts of things. And then he then ended it by saying, "I'm going to sign this off with my real name. My name's Jessica, and you've inspired me to live myself. So I'm going to come out to my family and friends this week as Jessica." And I thought, oh my God, you've just told me you fought in the war and you're telling me I'm brave. And then it was so lovely. She messaged me saying then the next day, or the next week rather, she sent me a picture of herself, dressed up in her own, what she wanted to wear, like a dress, you know, and did a makeup. And then she went to a job fair as Jessica. And I just thought, oh my God, like me posting something on LinkedIn that I thought would reach 5 people has reached somebody in America that fought in a war, you know, and and it's changed their life. And I thought, oh my, what? And it's things like that I have to remind myself sometimes. I think, why am I doing this? Is it really that important? Because sometimes I think, what's the point posting on LinkedIn today? I've got nothing interesting to say. But then you think, well, actually, there's people that really take your words seriously, and it might change their life.
You brought tears to my eyes. Just that representation is so important.
Yeah, no, it really is. Yeah,
it is. So now I almost want to apologize that we've really sort of dug into one part of you on identity, which is never my intent on these podcast episodes. But I really just think you had so many insights that we can share with people on the transgender identity. So thank you for that. And you also did obviously share about the impact on your mental health, even when you didn't know that that's what the underlying cause was. If you had any final tips, not for people that are transgender, but people that aren't, that don't have or don't think, that don't think they have trans people in their network, what do you think some of the things that they could do on a daily basis to make sure that those that are trans around them feel safe?
For me, when I was applying for my job now, the first thing I do, and I think a lot of people do it, especially Gen Z now, they'll stalk their social media of the company and they'll see, do they have these inclusive spaces? Do they have a Pride network? Do they post about Pride? And, you know, I saw one post for Pride. I thought, okay, that'll do. There's a community there. That's fine. I feel belonged. And, you know, it's that, isn't it? Is just making sure that there are spaces where you don't have to hide, especially in the workplace, because the last thing you want your colleagues to do is not be able to do their work probably because they can't be themselves, because we spend so much of our life in work. Why should you have to hide a part of yourself? Make sure you never ever just assume someone's gender, because I'd love to just have people start asking people for their pronouns as easy as it is to ask someone for their name, because it really is that simple. If you have a new starter in your company, just go around and ask what your pronouns are. It's simple, because they might genuinely just be considering it that day and they might be terrified to get on that call, but you asking that simple little thing will make them feel so much better. Just, yeah, do your research, because there's so much out there nowadays. There really is. Go on YouTube, look at trans men, trans women. People document their entire lives now, and it's really interesting to see, and it's educational. Even for me, I watch them like, wow, you've gone through all that. But yeah, I would say that though, definitely.
Now, George, what is it that you're doing to create an inclusive world for all trans people?
Outside of my 9 to 5 job, is I'm doing talks. For me, it's just sharing my experience in hopes that any other trans person who is uncomfortable with themselves has a sense of hope for their own future. You will be happy, because I thought for the longest time I wouldn't ever be happy. Going back to me saying, I thought 2015, any day now, it's gonna be done. And now I'm helping people that I never thought would be possible just by posting one little thing on LinkedIn. I've got a couple of teenage boys now, so little baby trans, and their mums reached out to me and they're asking, can you just hop on the video call with my son? He wants to ask some questions, and it's seeing things like that. It really makes me feel like, oh my god, I'm doing something, even if it's just 2 people's lives. That's still 2 lives. That's a big thing. So just being there as a support system mainly, and hopefully just paving the way, really.
Well, you're certainly making a difference. You have to be making a difference. So thank you for being that difference, George.
Thank you.
Really, I am going to put all of your contact details in the podcast description. So if anyone wants to get in contact with you, to engage you, to come into their organization, to share your lived experience and create safe organizations for trans people.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, George.
Thank you.